I'm trying to find it. Welcome to a conversation around the fire hosted by One Light Global. We're so happy to have you all here today, this week of Thanksgiving, and also the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower landing at Plymouth Harbor. We gathered here today to have a conversation, a courageous conversation around the aspects of history that get forgotten, that get hidden, that get intentionally set aside as we celebrate the mythology of our nation. So we're here today to explore the true history of Thanksgiving and how we can celebrate this secular holiday that we love and the beautiful aspects of it, gathering together with our family and being in gratitude for the harvest and for all of the blessings of our lives, while honoring and recognizing the true story and the terrible suffering of so many people, and hearing from Native peoples, First Peoples of this land, what their perspective is. How do they feel about this holiday? How can we honor them and respect their ancestors? What can we teach our children about this day? And how can we come together to create a new perspective from which to move forward together as people sharing this great land? So we're going to start off today with a prayer from David Moa in the Hopi language.
Pani pumumi sak ansa ya ikanik ansa nana waknani ansa tampia sa ya kamet pinana mi kia kaya piansa nana mi pisu hala ki ansa bal tutini ansa pu tahi ki ansa ibit yung jenis punya pu ansa pi tamapi au kia ansa koyong nono wane kaput pi tam ansa au when on sakinana ke su sakinana me want to take if how account you answer to me no madana mi ai ke account yo hoy nan ko sani e plan su him ha ko no masan yani tam tuna ya ke ansa we ma ta ti mam pi ta ka te yo ka yan we have ya sa ko mi yan right ta ki ma to na ko ni ko kita to ansa we want to guy and yes ni mi mai ta Pakati Navakantan ha Kamishoke.
Thank you so much, David. Was someone going to translate that? We can't hear you.
Can you hear?
Yeah.
What he said was we are glad that we had come together to join to have talk about the Thanksgiving. We hope to have a great discussion and also to make things better for the entire world, make the understanding become available to people so we can all understand what Thanksgiving is really about. But during the time of Thanksgiving, so we all need to we all can come together with happy, good hearts and enjoy the Thanksgiving. And glad that we all come together to fulfill this discussion. So with that, we ask everybody happiness and long life and prosperity for everybody, all our children of this world.
Thank you so much. So now that we can get started, I'd love to do a quick introduction of everyone. From Shamopavi, Second Mesa, Hopi Village in Arizona. Would you all like to introduce yourselves?
Oh, okay. My name is Shimopari,
We're having trouble hearing.
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay.
It sounds like the speaker's covered, the microphone's covered.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Keep speaking.
Yeah, I'm David Moa from Samopavi, and I'm a Sun Clan, and okay, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over here now.
My name is Timothy Moa. I'm also from Songopave, and I'm of the Sun Clan.
My name's Lindrick Lomaestua. I'm from Shamupa Village and I'm a Sun Clan.
I'm Iva Houdenosaunee from Sungupavi Sun Clan.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We're so much gratitude for your time and care and the energy it takes to share, this wisdom you've been carrying for a long time with the rest of the world. We also have with us today Christine Hill. Would you like to introduce yourself, Christine?
Sure. I'm Chrissy Hill, and I'm Tuscarora Beaver Clan, part of the Haudenosaunee people, located in Western New York near Niagara Falls. And here to share and learn and be in community with across Turtle Island and wherever else we may be.
Can you say a little bit about your work, Chrissy?
Sure, I do a lot of restorative practices, circle keeping, relationship building, and part of being Haudenosaunee is the long line of peacemaking, and just generally having compassion and joy when I can.
Thank you. And we also have with us today Sarah Walcott as a special guest. Would you introduce yourself, Sarah?
Hello, my name is Sarah Jolina Wolcott, and I am currently on the Mohican territory in the Hudson Valley. I originally am from California, the historical homeland of the Haudenosaunee people, and my work is in supporting people in bringing about a world that can survive climate change and which can have deeper spiritual fulfillment. And I see decolonization as a really essential part of that larger work of us coming into our full selves in a climate era. And I'm really honored to be part of this today.
Thank you. You also have an interesting family history relevant to today.
I do. My people my family has been here on this continent for many centuries. We came in 1635. And so my ancestors and Chrissy's ancestors knew each other, sat by many fires together. And so the Thanksgiving story is a story that is also part of my family history. It's not someone else's story.
And Jen.
Hello there. I work with One Light Global. Predominantly, my role is working with Hopi Nation and the beautiful people of Shamopavi and Second Mesa, the elders and the children. And we support the projects that are dear to the hearts of the people of Hopi Nation and sharing their gifts with us in the world.
Thank you. Thank you for everything you do and for representing today all the people from other nations, those from Australia, who care with profound depth of heart about the people of this nation and see the global impact of the story of this nation. So thank you for holding that seat at the fire today. So to start off, Sarah Walcott, I would love if you would share a little bit about the history of Thanksgiving that not everyone may know and be familiar with.
Yes, thank you. First, I just want to say that I keep learning about this history. I keep learning new parts of the history, and I think that everyone here probably has parts of the history that they can contribute to understanding, and that our understanding of history needs to become much more collective, and we need to tell many stories and help each other understand how the different threads have actually woven together, because we've been taught something that is very dismembered and very disjoined. And that makes it hard for us today to become a people who are remembered with Earth and with one another. And so most of the stories of Thanksgiving have a very kind of sweet way of talking about the relationship between Indigenous peoples and settlers when they first came. And when my ancestors first came to this land, and those who came right before they did, a few years earlier than they did, they had in their mind a way, what we now would call a cultural superiority in the way in which they treated everyone else around them. And I would say now that they had a disease of the mind and of the heart. And they didn't know how to treat the people around them well. And they didn't know how to live out the values that they espoused of love and kindness and Christian fellowship. And they did not do that in the way in which they treated people. And so to tell a different story of Thanksgiving is to help to give a more accurate piece. So there's a couple of different pieces I just want to highlight. The first kind of moment historically that we have, and which has often referred to as a Thanksgiving moment, is in 1621. It was a year after the Mayflower arrived in 1620. And it was a 3-day feast that was celebrated between the Wampanoag people and the English. And at that time, originally there had been 102 people on the Mayflower. A year later, there were 54. So there were a very small number of English people who were at this gathering. There were 90 people from the Wampanoag, and they were all men, 90 men, warriors, all from the Wampanoag group, society, nation. And that, like, why that feast was held is like there's a lot of different stories about why that was held. One of the common ones is that there had been a peace treaty that was being signed between the two groups. Another story that I've also heard is that earlier the Pilgrims had stolen corn from the Wampanoag, and they had apologized for stealing corn. And the Wampanoag chief said, okay, but you have to pay it back. And so the feast was in part them paying it back. And other people say that this was a place where both sides were kind of watching each other, and it was a tense gathering. It wasn't necessarily a joyful gathering. It was a gathering with a lot of tension in it. So there are different ideas of why this particular gathering happened, but it was not called Thanksgiving. It was not, that label was never given to it. And then about 15 years later, in 1637, there was a celebration of the Green Corn Festival by the Pequot tribes in Connecticut. And during this time, the settlers in Connecticut, a small group of pilgrims, got up very early in the morning when all the people were gathered, and when all the Native people were gathered together for their festival and everyone was asleep. And they purposely committed a mass genocide, and 700 people were killed. And the day after that, the governor of Massachusetts declared it a day of Thanksgiving, for thanking God for the death of 700 men, women, and children who were utterly unprepared. And I actually just want to take a moment, because I think every time we share a story like that, it hits us somewhere in our heart. And it's really easy to just kind of skip over it. So I just want to take a moment, because that's one genocide amongst hundreds and hundreds and thousands of genocides that happened the subsequent time of the set of the white men coming into this land. And I actually just want to quickly light a candle in honor of all of those who lost their lives then and who suffered from the process of colonization. May their lives that were lost not be in vain. And may we come to remember all of those who have died and lost their lives. And may we come into right relationship with Earth once again. So while that was a time in which it was known as Thanksgiving, it still was not necessarily a feast. The gathering that was celebrated after this massacre would have been a solemn occasion of prayer, and it would not have been necessarily a big joyous feast of eating turkey together. That wasn't what was happening. That took longer, and it kind of has to do with the way in which the people of the Northeast and the Pilgrims wanted to come together, and they wanted to kind of maintain a sort of sense of cultural superiority over the rest of the nation. And so they began to talk about this first Thanksgiving and how they had the right of the first Thanksgiving. And of course, historically, the Europeans came to the Southwest long before they came to the Northeast. And if we want to tell the real origins of Europeans, we would be looking to, and in this continent, we look to the Hopi, and we would look to those in the Southwest, not just to those in the Northeast. But as over time, a significant thing happened with one woman named Sarah Josephia Hale, and she was really promoting Thanksgiving as a cultural holiday. And she would consistently, year after year, promote it as a national holiday because she felt it was important for people to come together in thanks. And coming together in thanks is extraordinarily important. And so she lobbied Abraham Lincoln, who eventually agreed. And during the Civil War, he and his Secretary of State, John Seward, together penned the Thanksgiving Proclamation in 1863, in part because they wanted to have a time for families to sit together when there was a lot of fighting, and in part because it was a way of enabling unity between the North and the South. So it was a time for unification. And in doing so, he was borrowing from the original Thanksgiving Proclamation given by George Washington. So there's this, and that is when you start seeing Thanksgiving being taken over by the whole country as a celebration. And I think it's just really important that as we think about these histories, we recognize these different points, and we recognize that, like, in no point in time was this a bloodless, battle, occasion. But there were times of love and fellowship, as well as times of hatred and violence in this history, and that we can remember both. So I think that's enough for right now. I'm happy to kind of give, and to just again say that this is a conversation where many different, like, everyone I think has something to add to these histories.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that. It's just amazing to me how many threads there are in this story, and how, as children, most of us get taught, take a paper bag, make an Indian costume, make a pilgrim hat, and they're not even called pilgrims. They're separatists. Mm-hmm. And we get told this bogus story, and to know that there are so many different layers to the arising of this, it makes me so curious about how that changes how we hold this day. And I would love to hear from the Hopi folks or from Chrissy, what are different ways that First Peoples feel about this day? I feel like it's so often people try to make one view for Native peoples, like they all feel this way about today. But it feels, in my experience, much more complex, and there are many different views. So I'd love to hear from you directly. about how you feel about Thanksgiving, about hearing this history, about how you celebrate, whatever you'd like to share.
I think I want to share that a lot of the teachings on Thanksgiving was kind of forced upon us. As Native Americans, we've been sent out like to boarding schools. That was one of the things that we were, I guess, in a way to assimilate us and teach us all what they want us to learn. And as young kids, we were shipped out to boarding school, and everything that was taught to us was not the true history. And when you become an adult and start really researching and finding out what really Thanksgiving is about, and not knowing exactly what it was really about, because we were sent off to boarding school and taught all the stuff that were in the books, and most of it wasn't true. That's not true history.
Iva, can you turn the computer a little closer to you for the sound? Thank you.
So I'm talking about boarding school and how we were taught, in a way we were forced to learn untrue history, because that's what was in the books. A lot of the books that are written, like Sarah said, it's just like a good story that they want everybody to believe, but the true history was not included in that. And as high school students, we learned all this stuff about Thanksgiving, and then you become an adult and you start doing your own research and find out all of that wasn't true. And so as an adult now, knowing the true history of what Thanksgiving is, it just kind of makes you not want to do that particular holiday. But we're so adapted to the Western society's holidays. But the other thing is we're caught in between the Western society and our own Hopi culture. And we do have our own things that we do here during this time. And it's a whole complete different holiday for us. Not meaning really holiday, but that's how I'm going to put it. But a lot of this is sad, because when you think about how the Europeans came and forcefully came upon the different tribes, forcefully, just like she said, just for power to control people. It's really sad, because most of the indigenous people grew up with values of treating people right, to bring people in peacefully and everything. And they took advantage of that. And that's what really upsets me, is that people can do that, take advantage of you trying to bring them in. I understand they were starving when they arrived, and they took care of them. And then in return, they massacred them. You know, that's just not right. And for them to say, to celebrate that for massacring, that's just not right. And it just really bothers me to know that after I finally found out the true history. So I just kind of more focused towards our own ceremony that we have out here. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Iva. Len, were you going to share about what the Hopi are celebrating now? Or you said, you know, it's not a holiday, but what are the traditional ways to spend this month?
The month of November is called the Kelmuya, meaning it's the time of initiation for the men society. And that's when we put our young adults in through the initiation process, which is about 16 days, and they get initiated into the manhood, and we teach them the different teachings of how a man should be, how what kind of values they should have, how they can bring a family and support them. All that stuff was taught to them, along with protecting society, all that. So that's the thing that we celebrate is putting our young men through the initiation and teaching them the moral values of life. And so once they attain that, then there's another initiation that they go through in December. And that's when we give out their prayer feathers, offerings for long life, longevity, happy, successful life. And that one, December is for November, is kind of like a awakening month, where we teach our younger men the formalities of becoming an adult and what they have to um, acquire in order to do that, which is a lot of values and a lot of respect, how to raise a family, those kind of things. So that's what we celebrate. And like right now, tomorrow will be our fourth day, fourth morning, and tomorrow is the end of that ritual. Because of COVID, we can't really do anything. So we've kind of done a really short version of that ceremony this year. But hopefully next year when we do, when the virus is gone and we can do the complete cycle.
You had mentioned to me, Len, about this also being a month of gratitude for the plants and the animals.
Mm-hmm. Yes, everything that we teach them is to have a better, successful year, the upcoming year. For like say, if we pray for snow now and moisture, then come springtime, we're going to rely on that to do our farming. We do our fields and our agricultural practices. We do something called dry farming, which requires a lot of moisture during the wintertime, and then to sustain it through the summertime. So that's what it's geared towards too, is to rejuvenate the earth. There's a time when we can't bang things or make loud noises because the earth is supposedly frozen and we do not break the ice. So we have to walk very carefully. We can't be yelling or we can't be bouncing a ball or anything like that, or just making noises. So that's a whole month of that. We can't do stuff like that. So that's the time when we sit down and we tell stories of our history. Story time that's where we tell the stories to our younger um, children, and then we tell them about different things that happened throughout the history. And so with that, with Thanksgiving, the way the Hopi came across it was like my sister said was um, it was it was influenced. We didn't really have a thing that type of Thanksgiving. Our Thanksgiving was this, and then here they started taking us to school, boarding schools, and showing us their version of Thanksgiving, which they influenced us. But as we grew older, we kind of figured it out, and now we're more into our cultural Thanksgiving rather than that. Well, yeah, we could probably have a dinner, but then this one is more important because it carries our culture and it carries our Hopi people further with the knowledge. Back in 1641 was about the time when we finally had contact with the European, the Anglo. We did have previously before that we had contact with the Spaniards, and theirs was very brutal too. To our people when we had contact with them, they were very brutal. They enslaved us and did all kinds of torture among our people. But the thing they didn't do was they didn't. Well, their thing was not to really exterminate us. We were only here to try to change our culture, our traditions, and make us become Catholic. But we revolted against them, and as soon as we revolted against them, another group of Europeans came in, and they were more at exterminating our native people. And back in 1841, they when they were still up in the Massachusetts area, they found out that there was vast land towards the west. So they kind of like made a policy to kill the Indian off, the Native Americans off, and they put something about like $200 on a scalp to exterminate us. And they went all the way from there, all the way through Colorado, down to Arizona, California. And that was their policy back then. That was the time when we had contact with them, and then also with smallpox and everything they brought along, and which we were not immune to, and it just destroyed our tribes. Vast number of people died, and to celebrate something like that when they with a group of people that did that to us, it's not right. We need to have the true history taught. The Hopi believe that there is thing called a Hopi. To call a white man a Bahana, that's the definition of a white man in Hopi is Bahana. There's thing called Hopi Bahana or Hopi Vahana, Hopi Vahana. And then there's the Nikpan Bahana. So when we kind of associated with them, we realized that there was two different types of people that we were expecting to come. And we were expecting this Bahana to come and to help us, And so when they came, the Bahana that we call the Hopi Bahana is the person that has the same kind of values. They think the same way we do. They help Mother Earth. They they treat everyone equal. No, because Hopi is an ideal. You want to be this person that has the utmost respect and honor for everything. So that's the kind of Hopi that we were expecting. But then here, this other Bahana came and destroyed everything. Started mining things, started depopulating us, exterminating us. When he didn't get his way with that, then he started to assimilate us. And so those are the two that we distinguished. And this Hopi Vahana is the one that actually comes and they help us. They help us, rejuvenate the earth, help us restore our some things that were destroyed by the previous invaders. So those are some of the things that we have when we do what we can recognize them, and they come among us, so we can recognize these people. And then there's the other one that comes with sweet talk, and they come with a whole different intention. And then once we accept them in, all they want to do is just like take and whatever. So there's two different things that we would rather have this person that comes and helps us restore Mother Earth. That's what we see. And so this is something that we celebrate out here, is that to rejuvenate Mother Earth, to live off of it, and not to harm it, not to destroy it. And that's what our culture teaches us, and that's what we teach them this month to our young initiates. And hopefully they would have that mind to to keep land, to use the land, and not to own the land. Use it and feed their families off of it. And that's the main goal that we have, is to allow this moisture to come during this winter season. That way, in the spring, the lands will be fertile, our fields will be fertile, and we can use that
Thank you so much.
to plant our corn and feed our children. And when everything grows out there, grasses grow green, all the animals will also enjoy it. And all the little insects that are out there, that's who we do this. It's not just for the humans, it's for anything that's out there, all the life that's out there. And then also for people to benefit from it, not just the Hopi, but everybody throughout the world. And our prayer, when my uncle David gave the prayer, that's the ending part of it, was that all the have a good life. So that's what our Thanksgiving is about. It's just not for us, it's for everyone to benefit from Mother Earth.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lynn.
This is what I have to say about that.
It's so profound, the Hopi heart. I find, I know everyone from our team that meets you from One Light is changed forever by the commitment of the Hopi to, for thousands of years to hold these ceremonial cycles, not just for themselves, but for the benefit of all beings on this planet, and to hold that through so much suffering. And oppression. I have so many questions, so I'm trying to figure out what order to do this in. I'd love to hear, what you would say to. I love this distinction you made between the Pohanas, white people, can be Hopi Pohana, or they can be, Kahopi Pohana. And for the ones that would like to be Hopi, that come from this place of love and unity and compassion and wisdom, how can they celebrate this holiday? But before we go there, and I was also thinking about COVID, since you mentioned it, and how this story so far back, 400 years ago, how the myth that we tell about it is actually impacting COVID being impacting different tribes at much higher rates than everyone else because of the way that story played out. But before we go there, I'd love to give Chrissy a chance to speak, because I know she has her own perspective on Thanksgiving and so much to share. And then we can come back and hear more and hear from Tim and David a bit more.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and probably like you, Zoe, I have a lot of fireworks going off in my head right now, a lot of questions, a lot of similarities. And one of the things that I was hearing, when it gets cold and you're doing the winter, you tell the stories, and we have that same thing. We don't tell stories in the spring or the summer or the fall, because that's the time to be ready for winter and the quiet, and really just sitting around the fire and telling all those stories years after years. And the 7 generations that we really try to look forward to, which Sarah alluded to earlier, is that if I look at my kids or my grandson, my ancestors' interactions with Sarah's interactions would have been 7 generations ago, roughly. And when we put it in context, to be able to see it like that, going backwards, and then if I move a couple different generations and put myself more in the center, my great grandmother was at Haskell, or my grandmother was at Haskell and Thomas Indian School, and my great grandmother was at Carlisle for 5 of her years, plus another 4 at Thomas Indian School. So over, like, way too much of her life was in boarding schools, and so much loss of culture and language. And my grandson now speaks Mohawk and Tuscarora in my house on that land of my great grandmother. And I think that is super exciting, and that really thinking about the gratitude. And it's not so much about Thanksgiving, but as Len was saying, it's the gratitude for the air, the sun, the moon, the insects, the fish. And that is our version of Thanksgiving. And man, it's just these ideas of gratitude have been co-opted and renamed and retold in such ways that if you Google Thanksgiving address, you'll find this you know, kind of um, stripped down version of the way we live. And, you know, Len really spoke to how we also live in the gratitudes of the earth, that we don't, we're here to be on the earth, not to own the land and take its resources. And we're supposed to be sustainable. We're supposed to look forward to what our grandkids can do. And, you know, maybe in the future, our 7 generations, you know, they'll be telling stories about, hey, remember when our great grandfathers were on Zoom with the, you know, and the Haudenosaunee were together, you know, and I can just imagine that we're still going to have fires and we're still going to have stories, and we'll be like, hey, we sat in a room together. Like, what are you talking about? You know, because Zoom, probably no one's going to remember Zoom back. You know, it's like, how did they do that? Were they? So, you know, just the idea of having our way of life really re, um, reduced into something called the Thanksgiving address that you can just Google, and you can like, oh yeah, you know, and I never understood why Americans just have one day of Thanksgiving. It's like there's 364 other days of gratitude. You know, what are you doing with the rest of that time? You know, and
So,
it really glad to know that you know, our young ones at our school on Tuscarora are learning the Kanahara Thetra. We open the week with it, known as the words before all else, and they close the week with it. The entire school gathers together, and you know, it's just about the gratitude and peace, and the great tree of peace, which we might be able to see behind me. It extends its 4 roots, and the war club is buried, and the roots go into Turtle Island. And I think we have to remember that that this is for everybody. It's not just for natives. It's not just for us who have been put into boarding schools, but we sit here at this fire and extend it, all of this that we've been gifted with for everyone. And I think that's one of the reasons, you know, I think it's really powerful to talk about the real history, the actual history that is so violent and so full of power and authority, and a fight for resources when being able to solve some of the instability that we have now is just compassion and helpfulness. So, you know, just very grateful to be able to share these words and share space in this time and have some amazing stories. So
I love this story of 7 generations, Chrissy, with you in the middle. It really is a story of hope that your great grandmother was forced to these boarding schools, lost the language, lost the traditions. But now, with this broader perspective, your grandson has the language back and is getting the traditions back. That's so moving to me. And I'm curious what you would say to people who say, okay, you know, we acknowledge that this is a terrible history. And how shall we celebrate going forward?
well, I
How should
think
we spend this day in a way that is honoring? And how do you celebrate it? Do you
well
celebrate it?
well, I like acknowledging it as a day that we have been granted to spend together. I have 4 kids and they're all over the place. And a lot of times, Thanksgiving might have been the only day off that we had in common. And so it was about being with family. The boys used to go out hunting and really kind of just did our own thing. Sometimes we have 3 days of Thanksgiving. Sometimes we have Thanksgiving the week before. Sometimes we celebrate it twice because we're near the Canadian border, and our grocery stores sell all the Thanksgiving fixings on what is known as Columbus Day. And I say that with, I really don't want to, you know, but if we're going to throw history around, that's another thing we can revisit maybe next year. No more Columbus Day. Get into the real history of that. But really, you know, sometimes it feels sad. Sometimes it feels like the day of mourning, and I feel like that's not the chosen trauma that I want to uphold. I have plenty of other chosen traumas that I'm dealing with, and I think, you know, if I can just try to be compassionate and look through things with gratitude, and spend time with people that I want, including my housemates, Zoe and Sarah, we are going to have a more essential Thanksgiving, and I think we're going to try to acknowledge the land and the food and each other, and I think that's a great way to spend Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yeah, one thing that we've talked about is the food. Also, the food that we eat at Thanksgiving typically is not actually the food. So one way to honor and remember is to eat food that actual Native people would have been eating. So, Sarah, did you remember some of those? There's venison and fish.
Yeah, I mean, the traditional fare of Thanksgiving, all of those foods are native foods to this land. Most likely in those first few celebrations, we don't have any record of turkeys being eaten, and turkey as a main, like we have records of venison, so we're going to have venison this year. But like turkeys were kind of came into that picture later on in this sort of multi-stage history that I mentioned, and it's I mean, like it's hard for me too to kind of actually totally separate out. I think it's important when we're working with these big holidays, like most of us have such deep embodied memories or associations with them, and so sometimes like shifting food can be difficult. But I really encourage folks to ask, not just to ask where your food is coming from and what are the cultural history of your food, because we often disassociate food from mythology and food from the culture from which it comes. So if you're having corn, then what are some of the stories around the three sisters of corn, beans, and squash that you can also share? And what are some of the myths around corn that like aren't necessarily what you grew up knowing from general American culture, but are rooted to your particular place? Because all throughout North America, people have been eating corn for a long time. And so what is the particular mythology or the particular cultural stories in your location, in your land, with that particular food? And like kind of beginning to learn what your food is differently, and learning what is the squash, and what is that like what is your relationship with that squash, and where is it coming from, and how is it feeding you, and what are the squash's stories, because the squash has their own stories and the corn has their own stories, and being able to kind of bring all those stories and weaving them together. And I just also just sort of wanted to mention that, as I think one of the things that both Chrissy and all of our elders are pointing to when they're kind of talking about this, I want to highlight is, once you open the door of Thanksgiving, it's like you open this web. And that's because Thanksgiving is such a powerful holiday. It's why it's such an important thing to work with. It's why it's such a critical holiday for us to engage with more deeply, because it opens this huge web of the entire histories that have been dismembered in our country. And that's everything from boarding schools to peace treaties to who owns the land. And all of that, like just like this one holiday can lead you down all those different pathways. And so it becomes a really exciting space to like have a huge variety of conversations. And I think that, and I would love to hear other people's opinions on this, but we don't have to sugarcoat these stories for our children, and to really recognize the extent to which our children can handle difficult stories, and they will not necessarily, it will not like damage them. It actually helps them, that actually hearing the stories that really happened, hearing the real histories, even for small children, And it can be done well. It can be done in a way that's caring and compassionate. Like children have far more resilience than we often give them credit for. I'm also just curious if others have thoughts about how do you talk with your children about these issues?
I was just as you were talking, Sarah, I was thinking about some of the social justice circles that I've been sitting in lately, and how upset a lot of non-Indigenous people are, the BIPOC people, the non-BIPOC people are, about finding out the reality of their who they are. And if you lie to them when they're young, and then when they're 30 they figure it out, it damages everybody at that point, and it changes the conversation. And being able to say, you know what, this is kind of bad, this is kind of scary, people died, it wasn't good, and this is what we did, and this is how we can do different. I think any situation where a kid can have guidance in a positive way, and provide that ability, rather than kind of shocking their system later when they realize all of these things happened and nobody ever told them. I think that would, talking to your kids as young as they can, and again, talking, what you're talking about with food, knowing where your food comes from. Take them hunting, take them, let them dig in the ground and get dirty and see the bugs and the worms, and it's not all shiny and packaged up in cellophane. And I think that's really important. And you're absolutely right. Kids definitely are persistent. And if we can use them to help us guide us towards the truth, we're all better for it.
Thank you, Cassie. I'd love to hear some more from Hopi Nation. You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourselves. You're muted.
You can hear now, right?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of these things that have been, really was set up, allowed, because a lot of people, a long time ago have been, I would say they were traumatized, from all the things that, had happened, in the past, and today now, we talk about Hopi, that, we say it's peaceful people. And when I look at that, the word Hopi is what we're saying, Pahana Hopi, Hopi Pahana. But that's just, it's everyone with good hearts that come together. That's what I call Hopi. It could be any nationality. Then again, with our, going back to our sustainable living here, with our natural food that we eat, natural food we bring together on earth, that are granted to us, so that we could continue living on with that. And I believe that that's during, okay, we're talking about Thanksgiving. Our Thanksgiving is every ceremonial that we go through, today, like Linda had mentioned, the Wujin ceremony. What we have is nokwibi, and that's all natural food from the ground, from Mother Earth. And then all what Sarah had talked about, squash and all that, beans, whatever we have grown here, those are all natural food that we have today. But again, when you look back into the history of what the colonists did, what we have gone through, you look at it today. Today, technology. Right now, we have technology. We can, talk and see one another here, but back to having some the foods we eat too, there's a lot of good necessities that we have, but yet we're combining it with the processed food. Today we're eating all nothing but processed food. And now everything that we also take for healing, natural remedies, medicine, that comes from the earth is combined now to pharmaceutical with chemical. Like we're still dealing with the history today, and now and those are things now that it bothers me a lot because it affects our young ones today. We're looking into our seventh generation here, but what's going on right now is all these food that we're eating and all the medications that we're taking. Our kids are taking, especially newborn now. They're getting those shots, and by the time they're 18, 20, even their mind aren't going to be clear. We're dealing with a lot of technology today rather than being physical. Out there in the fields, and all these stuff that we're doing right now is, I mean, talking about right now about Thanksgiving is, yeah, what is Thanksgiving? Are we thinking, what had happened in the past with with our forefathers, or are we thinking what we have today? That's kind of something that I'm puzzled with, and I try to figure out a way how we can um, bring this back to our people to have a better understanding. Because under my traditional form of government, as our own government, I still feel I have a strong belief and a strong knowledge of how we can succeed our future generation to the next year. And I think that's what we're doing here. And it's a struggle. Just like Lynn said, our our Sarah Wilson ceremony it's very short today. What we did through our ceremony when we should go through the whole um, the whole ceremony itself to complete it and um, make it a stronghold for everyone. Because every prayer that we do is for all. It's not for ourselves. And this is one thing I look at also too is it's really unique that we pray for all living beings out there, plant, life, animal, and then whatever is out there and the people out there, and then we pray for ourselves. So that's not being selfish, and that's being eco, bringing the whole nature of life into our hands and carrying them as our children. So that's the way I would look at this whole thing here. And when we talk about again Thanksgiving, again plan how we're living here today and how we're protecting our land and how we're here today. I think it's because while looking at it from my medicine part of work is plant world is here, animal is here, and human. And the only way for us to all be here together, alive, helping one another, is we need oxygen, water, and air. Then there's a life here. And I think if we can look at that picture, then somehow we can all work together and help one another and work together as being equal rather than separated. Yeah, yeah, and destroying each other, working together. So it's not. Yeah, it's like a give and take. It's not a take. What had happened in the past, but it's still happening today. I don't know if I got this clear on the on your end. There's so much you guys are talking about. My mind's just going. I'm jumping. I think I'm jumping here and there, but somewhere I'll puzzle this together and I'll put it in writing. Right.
Well, what would you tell people to tell their children, Tim or David?
What's that? What would
Well,
you tell
yeah,
us?
this question keeps coming up from the audience and from other people of like, what do we tell our children? You know, what would you tell people about how what can people do that want to be Hopi Pahonas of how they can celebrate Thanksgiving this year? What's something they can integrate or bring in?
Yeah, kids are very kids, they're resilient. Like you can learn something and then they can, so the best thing to do is just tell them the truth, you know. Um, the way we were told, and it took us time for us to really understand it, but now that we do, we want to tell the truth. So I think that's the best way to do is the best approach is to tell them the truth. That way they're growing up with that and they're thinking already beyond, and along with the teaching, the values and everything that you're to teach them, they can put everything together and move with that and not be puzzled, not be lost. Like today, it took us a long time for us to figure this thing out. We were sent to boarding schools or at an early age, we were 5 years old. Then we were sent off the reservation. We barely turned 13. And we stayed, most of us stayed out there till we turned 18. And then some still went on. And so, and then finally coming back and then getting immersed in your culture and trying to understand what had just happened and finding out the truth. So I think it's best that you let your children know early before
So
anybody else does.
once the kids know and they say, okay, so that's what happened, and now we're gonna have a big dinner. Like,
Yeah.
how can people then have this holiday in a way that appreciates the gratitude, that recognizes that the first peoples of this land were grateful every day, that integrates, the love of the land and the animals, but also honors this history and has space for, this is a day a family can come together, and how do people then move forward with all of that information? And I think also just really importantly, this conversation so often is like, well, that happened, right? There was all of this horrible tragedy, this genocide happened, and now we have Thanksgiving. But that misses this piece that they're still here, right? You're still here. The history, we're in it, we're living it, right? Right now, what can we do with the people that are still here? And also, I'm just going to keep throwing questions at you. So answer whatever one you like. Like, for those of us who are immigrants, I'm second generation. How can they relate to this story? How can they be allies? How can they meet this day? Iva.
Like Lynn said, I think it's just best to tell them the truth so they know what happened and not to blame themselves, because of what happened then was not them. It was other people that did that. And to make it a better future for their children, to speak the truth about it and to learn from it. A lot of things happened, and as Hopis, we're really forgiving. We forgive for that. We live for the future and not we look back at the past and we want to try to avoid what happened in the past. So not to tell them the truth, but not to blame themselves. It wasn't them, but to make it a better future for their children so they have a positive side from their side, teaching their children, you don't treat people like that. We're all equal. We're human beings. We all breathe the same air. These are the things that people need to understand, is that we're all one. And if they don't understand that, they won't have peace with themselves. And these are the teachings that we're taught. That's why, we continue on, and that's all they need to do is teach them the good values, not to treat people bad, because in return, karma is out there, whether they want to believe it or not. but it's out there, and that's what I believe. So that's all I tell people that talk about Thanksgiving. You know, we're sorry this happened to you guys. What can we do? There's nothing you can do to change that, but you can look at it in a more positive way and make a change for the future of your family or whoever you're trying to teach this. So that's what I would share with them.
Mm. That's very powerful. Thank you, Iva. And is there some way that they can relate to the tribes that are still here, the people that are still here, that made it through and survived despite everything that was thrown at them? Anyone can answer that.
You know, I think that these questions are so important. And on some level, part of what we need to do, and I think part of what COVID presents us with the opportunity to do, is to experiment with new rituals and new ways of talking about these ideas together. And I actually think we need some experimentation to find out what's going to be working with our families and our children. And this question that you're asking, Zoe, it's just it's a beautiful set of questions. All of them are a beautiful set of questions all together. They're all interrelated. And this question about, you know, like, I think that to talk about Thanksgiving as if it was something that only happened in the past risks the continuation of the dismembering. So it's both a question of having having more accurate histories, but bringing that to the present day and acknowledging that, like, these I'm going to say we settlers can still be and find ways of being in better relationships. I'm going to start with better before we get to right, but being in better relationships with the indigenous people who were here first. And we have so much that we can learn from them today. And we have ways in which we as a people can learn to tell our stories differently, our own stories differently. And that includes those who are very recent immigrants. Because everyone, no matter when your family came here, even if you only arrived in this country a few years ago, or just even this year, it's like you are walking into this history. And so your everyday life is being impacted by this history. And so you want to know what it is. And you want to know some of the folks who are trying to find a new way of doing things differently now, so that we can create a better future together. Because this remains a place of a lot of hospitality, and the hospitality that brings people here from all over the world is a hospitality that was first shown to my ancestors when they came here from overseas. And that is a value that we continue to uphold. And I mean, not as well as we could, but we try. I think it's also just important to acknowledge that to distinguish between the desire to give thanks and have, like, as Chrissy said, for so many people, this might be their own one of 2 or 3 days in the whole year that they have off and they can spend with their families. And I don't want to discredit the importance of that, right? When thinking about how to do it differently, and to find ways that we can have moments of being solemn as well as moments of celebration. That we can have both, that we can have moments of telling the real history of what happened. And we have moments of saying, like, today, when we gather together, we are not going to ignore what happened. Because that, like, again and again, that's one of the most important things, is to not ignore what happened. And we can still be grateful that we are here alive today. And we can be grateful that there are people who survived the genocide. And we can be grateful that the sun still shines, and that we can still grow food together, and we can find new ways of growing food together better. And to, like, really point the gratitude in such a way that it acknowledges multiple perspectives.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Was there anything anyone else wanted to add to that? Chrissy or over at Hopi? You're on mute. Can you unmute, Iva? There you go.
I think what she mentioned was change, you know, as we move along. not to forget about the past, but learn from it, and then come up with something else, a different, there's a different approach to it. You know how we can celebrate it. Um, with our Hopi, we've done that. We've learned to kind of like put that aside and still continue every day. And every morning we would give our before the sunrise, we would go outside and we would pray the sun for giving us another day to live on this planet. And hopefully we can fulfill our intentions for the day and help other people out, and also to give us guidance throughout the day. And then, so that's what we do every day. And we have certain things that's supposed to teach us that. And so that's what I teach the younger adults, male adults, about their responsibility, what they're responsible for, and that's what we should. That's the approach that we have. And as long as we keep teaching our younger generation to pray every day for the life that's been given them, and not to just disregard it and have no purpose. Um, that's kind of like how we dealt with it. We moved on from it, and we've learned to pray for another better day, for all people, so we can all have the same, happy long life. And that's what we've moved on to, from the genocide that we were exposed to, and then learn from that, and then help people understand that this is not the way of life we want to live. So we have to continuously pray, pray every morning, every day for people out there that are suffering from ailments, from stuff like that, and then to keep our leaders straight, so they can, so we can follow their path, and not to be harmed or anything. And it's just those kind of things we continue to pray for harmony, peace and harmony. And Hopi is mainly that, it's an idealism where you want to live this way that you never harm anybody, or you never, it's an ideal way of living, that you want to honor everything that's out there, life, people. So if you fulfill that, then you've succeeded that day, and you can call yourself, hey, I did something in return, and something good, a good deed for today. I didn't harm anybody. I didn't say anything to anybody to discourage them. But instead, I encouraged people, someone out there. At least one person you can encourage, and that's enough for a day. So today we're on Zoom now, and we're talking about this, and it's like that's our Thanksgiving. Pray every day for everybody. It's not just on that one day, but it's every day throughout the whole year. And tomorrow I'll be doing the same thing. And so for us, it's like Thanksgiving is every day. We give thanks to our Creator for giving us another day to live, and then to fulfill our intentions, and also for everything, for all the insects, animals out there. If we do it right, then they'll be able to survive without hardship. So this is what we do every day. And Thanksgiving was the concept that kind of like at first we didn't understand it, but because it involved food, that's when we kind of went towards it. Today now we celebrate. Hopi celebrates Thanksgiving also, but for that one day. But I'm pretty sure the next day we're going to celebrate it, and then on until the end of the year we'll start all over again. So it's every day for us that we celebrate Thanksgiving. Just do a prayer, simple prayer for the world, and then move on. So that's what that's the change is still. I mean, the thing occurred, but we just maintained it. coming all the way towards this to now. So it's yeah, like, our children know what Thanksgiving is. They always draw pictures of turkeys and pilgrims and all this, and that's what Thanksgiving is to them, and that's how they see it. But then when we go through our ceremonies, they see something else. The songs that we sing, the drum beat that we use, and then the meaning of the songs, where one day we live in catastrophe and then the next day it's bright again. The ending of the song, and it's bright again. We're happy again. Those are the songs that we celebrate. So, that's we haven't really changed it to something else. It's just the form that our ceremonies were carried through. We're still doing the same thing. So that's our education for our young kids today.
Lendrix, I'm so touched, like profoundly, by what you're saying. And, I'm sitting here and I have tears in my eyes. And I'm realizing that, the colonized mind was like, I really want a list. Like, I really want a list to give people of things they can do on Thanksgiving, like light a candle for the people who died, or light a candle for the people who are still here, or tell people, discover what land you're on and who the first people were, or go out and plant something, And what's shifting in me so profoundly as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about how Thanksgiving's an easy day. It's kind of like a token day for people to connect with Indigenous people, with Native people to this land, and then they forget the rest of the year, right? And I can imagine that is very frustrating and painful. And what I hear you saying is it's not about a list. It's not about something you can do. It's about really touching into the way of life and doing that every day with gratitude and awareness for all the creatures of this earth and being the best person that you can be for the benefit of all, and being in gratitude, being in ceremony is really who you are all the time. And that perhaps that's the best way that non-Indigenous people can honor Indigenous people on Thanksgiving, is to touch back into this way of life and commit to that as a daily practice, as a way of being, rather than just doing some one-off token. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm really, really touched. So we're almost out of time. Is there anything else that wants to be spoken into the space before we go?
Bless you.
Bless you, Sarah.
One of the things that I'm kind of sitting with right now is just thinking about not just my own family and my own people, but the others that are oppressors and dominators, and kind of thinking about what Zoe is saying is like, how far must someone's soul have gone off that those roles and responsibilities to be in right relationship with nature to create such harms against somebody else. And sometimes I have days where it's like, well, if I can't do good, I don't want to do harm. And I think that's not it's not always ideal, but I think if you have the intent to do harm, you will create harm. And unfortunately, harms are created all the time, just through stereotypes and things like that, of believing that Indigenous people are others, or they are past tense, And really those are kind of I feel like they're conditioned tendencies that really make us feel like we don't have choices in things. But if we move forward with intention and gratitude and revisit our roles and responsibility of who we are as people of this earth and people of each other and people of the cosmos, I think we can kind of work our ways away from those conditioned tendencies that make us feel like we're trapped in one way of being.
I'm thinking also from what you said, Chrissy, my friend Yeja sent an email yesterday about, this story is a tragic story, but there is a side of it where the native peoples were kind and generous, and that we get to choose. Like you say, Chrissy, we have chosen traumas, and we can choose which part of the story that we look at also to inspire us without ignoring the whole story, but to really honor the kindness and the depth of wisdom and compassion that was in these people and how we can learn from that and carry that forward. Iva, I keep seeing you nodding on the side.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah, that's really up to us as individuals, how we accept things, how we take things. So that's really up to us how we're going to approach things like that in all life issues. So always try to look at the positive side. I mean, there's a lot of negative that happened, but we can't change a lot of that. So we have to look at the positive side to move forward. Because if you don't, you're going to always be stuck. And there's a lot of resentment in what happened with the past and stuff, but we can't always hold on to that. We have to look at the positive side and move forward. What did we learn from it, and how are we going to deal with it should it happen again? That's what we have to look forward to, and not hold that resentment, because you're not going to be at peace with yourself if there's so much resentment. We have to accept what happened, but learn from it. And as far as the food and stuff, we need to start eating the right foods that are grown. I remember one year during Thanksgiving, I invited my family and told them, okay, we're going to have venison. You guys are welcome to come eat with us. And I'm suggesting bring all home. And because we're so used to what Thanksgiving is about, turkey, dressing, and everything, only 2 families showed up to my dinner, because it was going to be a healthy Thanksgiving dinner. And I wasn't surprised. I knew that was going to happen. But, these teachings of all the healthy foods, a lot of us aren't eating that anymore. We're not taking from Mother Earth what was giving to us, and it's free. It's out there. All the wild edible greens, the corn that we eat, and the way we cook our corn and stuff, how people are saying corn's not good for you, but most of our people, we cook it in a way that it is good for us. And so a lot of these, how food is being approached, oh, don't eat that, you're going to get cancer from it. Don't eat this, it's not good for you. And it's really how we're taught to cook it has a big impact on making it, healthy for us. So all these teachings we need to share with our younger people that don't know this, is how we're going to approach cooking food traditionally, and how it's good for our body versus eating all this processed food. I mean, even the turkey, all that, what is that thing that they put in turkey that makes you all sleepy? Even that's not good for us. Tryptophan, whatever. Yeah. I mean, why don't you go and get a wild turkey, and that there's none of that in there. These are the teachings that need to be taught to our young ones, so we know more about the healthy.
I want to talk about the 7-generation model, which Native Americans have used to sustain their cultures, keep it going. And that is a good model to use if you want to teach the younger generation what it's about. And this model teaches, there's information passed on from previous generations all the way to you, and you are now responsible to pass that information on to your offsprings. I think we're at that level now where we have grandkids. And this is the time that we can sit down and teach them these cultural um, and outside influences, and make them aware that some of these can be done positively. Come up with some kind of positive way to celebrate some of these things. And it's not too late right now. I know we're probably at the fourth generation right now, and we can easily pass it on to our next generations. And that's how you keep things going. It's all information based. Information given to us from our great grandparents, and then now we possess that. We hold that knowledge, and then we can pass it on to our great grandchildren. And that's how long it goes, 7 generations. And some of the things that I've witnessed with the generations upcoming generations now is that they're kind of confused. They have this technology that they're living in, and then they have this culture that they come from, and they're sitting right in the middle of it. And depending on the kind of grandparents they had, like our grandparents all were pulled out and sent to boarding schools, but they learned things from the boarding schools, and they taught that to us, those kind of values to us, where we learned those from them, and we're now living that. And then we kind of teach our younger kids that now. Responsibility is one of them. What you have to do when you're part of a family, what's your responsibility? And especially with their young adults, male adults, what's your responsibility when you become an in-law at your in-laws' place? Those kind of things. And then for the female, the girls, what's your responsibility now that you have an in-law? You're an in-law to this family. Those kind of things be shared, and that way they don't or for something like a celebration, they already know their responsibility. They can perform it, and once they do that, then it satisfies other people, and more people are more satisfied. They're like, wow, I'm glad I have a son-in-law that can provide. I'm glad I have a daughter-in-law that can provide. Those kind of teachings we were taught, that we've done, passes on to them, and then they can in turn pass it on. And those are some of the positive things that can come out from this 7-generation model. And if we can go back and teach that model to our generations, then yeah, I think we can continue this this responsibility to our kids, and also for celebrating certain things that they've achieved. Every day, it's an everyday thing that we have to do. That's what I wanted to talk about with the 7-generation model.
Thank you. We are just about out of time. I feel like we could keep talking for hours. So maybe we'll have to have another conversation. So before we do another closing prayer, I just wanted to say to anyone watching, we have a program here at Hopi Nation called Not One Huyam. You're looking at the the leaders yeah, and teachers who are keeping the culture alive. You know, Iva was talking about food. She's an amazing chef of traditional Hopi food. Lendrick teaching weaving. Tim is doing silver work, and his wife does beading, and David's incredible with medicine. And there are other teachers, Francis, Augustine, who we missed having today, who do planting and painting. And it's an incredible project, and they have all put so much time and energy into it. So it is Giving Tuesday. I thought it was today, but apparently it's next Tuesday. If you'd like to donate, 100% of the donations go directly to this project. If you go to our page, One Light Global on Facebook, and give it a like, you can stay up to date on events like this and offerings like this and what we're doing. It's been a challenging year with COVID, but we're hoping once COVID is lifted, to do the big volunteer weekend at Hoping to plant and build that we had planned for a year ago. So hopefully that'll be spring 2021. And that's really the best way to give, is to give your time and energy and connect and just meet each other, be this one human family that we are. Is there anything I forgot, Jen? You can also sign up for our newsletter, and we'll be sending out a recording of this, and we will be sending some sort of PDF. Was there anything I forgot, Jen?
I think we've been fielding questions that have been coming in, and I feel like the majority have been answered within the beautiful dialogue that's been unfolding. Any that haven't been answered, I'm sorry. Hopefully we can get back to them, or perhaps we can have another call. And if we have time, it would be really beautiful if someone would like to do a closing prayer for us. It would be a beautiful way to finish the call off today. So thank you all.
I wanted to invite Sarah and Christy to come visit.
They're coming in April.
Similarities in our culture, and I look forward to that. In April, and we have our project scheduled for April too. Hopefully, that come visit us. Like talk a little bit more.
Right, would someone like to do a closing prayer for today?
Mr. Tim Moore.
Yeah, Tim.
Tuanze tamia anza sirpli tuan tikai da yana kamin piu we want to takari ita labai happy tamnyo na anza tam senior lol ma sin ma mga we want kya kya senior no akina ita tamia anza au sir tu tenne tama ye sir kya sin me iwa katse sin ma mga maha pilul ma siapini uyan yes ani we mo katse iwa kalani.
Hey, what he said was we have completed this talk amongst ourselves, and we've sent the message out. Hopefully that people out there have got our message and continue to live better and live in harmony with one another. And also towards the end, all the people strive. That's what his conclusion is. We thank everybody for coming together and giving all your knowledge and all your information. Hopefully the people out there will understand it and live better and have a better understanding on Thanksgiving and learn to live and pray every day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
One world.
One world, one family, one light. Thank you all so much for your presence today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your compassion, sharing your experience of being a human in a body alive on this planet at this time. It's been such an honor to share this time and space with you. So thank you all. Asquili.
Oi.
Yep,